Aloha. This is Robin Garrison, your certified hospice and palliative care nurse, live and direct from Maui, Hawaii. Today we are going to discuss grief. In the midst of this coronavirus, grief is very prevalent, whether it's the loss of a loved one, a job, and basically sometimes just people being in social isolation. So, in terms of my personal story, I lost my grandmother about 7 years ago. I lost my father about 5 years ago. Neither one of them I was able to be with, which was hard for me as a hospice nurse because I take care of everybody else. And it was hard because I could not take care of my own family. After my father died, I took about 3 weeks off of work because I could not go back until I had resolved my own grief. With my grandmother, I saw her 2 weeks before she died, which was nice because I was able to see her while she was alive, and although she was nonverbal, I could still see her love in her eyes and feel it in her heart, and it was a wonderful experience. And our family, we had such wonderful experiences with my grandmother. We celebrate her life and we tell lots of funny stories because she was a delightful lady. And one of my favorites was when I was very young, my grandmother would wash the dishes after our Sunday dinners, and she would have her hands in the dishwater, and I would pull her pants down so she couldn't pull them up. So anyway, a little crazy, but we had a lot of funny stories. So today I have with me Emily Threat. She is the author of a book called Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief, a book that's going to be published in 2021. She also lost two husbands, and she facilitates Writing Through Grief workshop, and she's facilitated Death Cafe, and she has become a fabulous expert in finding joy in the midst of grief. So Emily's with me today. And Emily, can you describe grief for you when it was at its lowest point and how you got out of it?
Aloha. I, as Robin said, have lost two husbands, and the first one was sick for 2 years before he died. And with him, he was a bioethicist, and his specialty was living and dying and teaching classes on that. Yet he never really realized he was dying, so we kind of, even though I knew it was coming, I wasn't really prepared for it when he was actually not there anymore. And it was really tough. We had been very prominent in the community, and when he first got sick, everybody was visiting and calling and all that sort of thing, but he stayed sick too long, and it wasn't that exciting anymore, and so people stopped coming by, and I had become very isolated. So after he died, I spent a lot of time alone, and that was hard. It's really hard to just stay by yourself, but I didn't have any desire to go any place or do anything. And after a couple of months, the university where I used to teach called and offered me a job. So I thought, well, I've got to get out of the house. I've got to do something. So I went back to work, and I'd go to school and be a good actress and teach my class and do my meetings, and then go home and sit by myself again. So toward the end of the first year, it was getting to be New Year's time, and I thought, I've got to do something different this year. Something's got to be better. I can't go on like this. This isn't living. So I decided to make a New Year's resolution, and it took me a while to figure out what to resolve. So it came to me through meditation and just trying to figure out what it was I was supposed to do, that I should accept invitations. And I thought, rationally, that's kind of crazy because I hadn't had any invitations to accept. But once I set the intention to actually accept invitations, they started coming to me. And it was really cool. And I got opportunities to do things that I had never done before. Like one of the things the local newspaper called and asked me to be on the editorial board for a year position, and I accepted it, and it was fascinating. I met people and did things I never would have done before, and I had quite a few different things like that of things that I wouldn't have sought out for myself. But once I set that in intention, things started flowing my way, and that helped a whole lot. I have a whole lot more examples of what happened with that if you'd like to hear about them. And then the other thing that I did was I started writing gratitude lists. And at first I thought, no, this sounds like a dumb thing to do because I don't have anything to be grateful about. I'm pretty sad here. But once I started realizing all the things that were in my life that I was grateful for, it was really great. And I wrote so many lists and just kept writing and writing and writing, and finally got a notebook and filled it up with things that I was grateful for, and it really changed my perspective. It helped a lot. Then when Ron died, he too had been sick for a couple of years before he died, but we lived a different life. We lived very much in the moment, focusing on each other and doing things that made us happy, and spending all of our time together. And we did have lots of friends that surrounded us here on Maui. We had moved to Maui for those last couple of years, and it was really different, and that helped. And I did kind of hit the bottom when he first died for a little while, but it didn't take nearly as long. And I recognized that if I'd start accepting invitations and writing gratitude lists and writing in my journal, that it would help a lot. So that's what I did.
So, do you notice that we're exercising social distancing? We're changing the computer back and forth so we're not so close to each other. So remember to do that. And remember to take your precautions, whatever you're doing these days. And so, Emily, you were talking about writing. And one of the things you mentioned to me the other day was writing a letter to the coronavirus. Can you tell me a little bit about that exercise, please?
Yes, I discovered that writing was one of the very best things to help me through grief and any of the situations that I was dealing with. And so I ended up starting a writing group here on grief, writing through grief here on Maui, where people would come together and we would write, and it was very helpful. And one of the exercises they liked best was writing letters to whoever it was that died, or we had several different ways that they could write these letters. And when they finished writing the letter, they would write a letter back from whoever it was. For instance, if I wrote to my husband, Ron, then Ron would write back to me after I finished. And it's amazing what comes out. It's just flows. And I'm not positive where it comes from, but it really helps. So I was thinking this week for my new Writing Through Grief group that I have on Facebook. It's a private group if you'd like to join. We decided that we would write to the coronavirus. So I tried it out to see how it would work first, and I wrote everything to the coronavirus that I wanted to express, which was kind of interesting because we tend to hold these things back or don't have anybody to tell them to, so we don't. So I wrote to the coronavirus, and then the coronavirus wrote back to me, and I was surprised at what came back. But I kind of liked it. It really helped me put things in perspective. So that's a really good exercise to do for grief. And the people that I've been sharing it with have had really good success, so I'd encourage you to do it too.
So when I first met Emily a few years ago, her husband Ron was still living, and we started I joined them in an exercise that they would do daily. So we would meet every morning, we would do a reading from a book, and one of the people in a group would do a guided meditation. Then we would all share a joy in our life, and then we would read the Oath of Manifestation and how to manifest things in our life. So that was one of the things that became a joy in all of our lives. So that can be helpful. And I do have a YouTube channel. It's called Black Girls Do Meditate, and there's some meditations in there that share that entire process if you would like to see them. And Emily, what do you suggest for healthcare providers who may experience continuous waves of grief when losing patients during this coronavirus pandemic?
I started out in healthcare very young when my dad bought an ambulance company, and you only had to have a first aid card to go on ambulance calls. So at 14, I started dealing with death and dying in the ambulance frequently. And then later I worked in healthcare in the emergency room and in OB and the OR mostly. So I've dealt with a fair share of death in a working situation. And I would find that I was really, really good at handling the situation as it was occurring with the families, with the people, whatever needed to be done. I was just solid and was always kind of surprised at how well that I dealt with things until I got out in the car to come home. And then I would get shaky or have trouble sleeping, and it was kind of hard. And so I decided I needed to work on that. So what I did was started using my journal as a help, and would write down what happened and write it all out. And it was like once you get everything expressed, it really helped me with moving on. It's so important to be able to take care of yourself, because if you don't, then you can't take care of the next person that well. And it is cumulative. So it's important, I think, to do whatever you need to do for self-care. If you need to go out and do something different, get a pedicure or get a massage, do that. But express your feelings. If there's somebody you can talk to or other healthcare workers you can talk to, that's great. But using your journal and using writing that gratitude list will help you a lot too, to help you keep things in perspective of what you're dealing with in the moment now, instead of dealing with the moment that has already occurred over and over again.
Thank you, Emily. So the thing about grief is that everybody's different. Everybody handles it different. Everybody's situation is different, so please do not judge other people. Sometimes people get angry, sometimes they get sad, sometimes they isolate themselves, sometimes they get hyper and they want to shop and they want to do all kinds of things. So everybody handles it differently. So please be kind, please be gentle, and please lend an ear. And sometimes people need to be listened to, sometimes someone needs to cry. So if you can be kind, if you can lend that hand, if you can be supportive of our healthcare workers, of our nurses, of our people that are working 24-hour shifts, that are working way too much, please help. Please be kind. Please be full of love. And thank you for listening. And then you can either reach out to me through Twitter. On Maui Nurtures everywhere, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Maui Nurtures. And Emily can be reached at Threat Emily, Threatt Emily, on Twitter, and Emily at lovingyouwaythroughgrief.com via email. So thank you for listening. Aloha.